David?
Oh, my gold. All right, last year's first quarter shocked everybody with a 2.9% drop, largely because of winter weather we didn't think we'd see again for a while. But this year is proving us all wrong. So will we see another GDP drop because of the weather again? Let's bring in our panel. We have Sabrina Schaefer, Forbes contributor, Independent Women's Forum Executive Director, Hillary Kramer, A&G Capital President and Chief Investment Officer, and our own Cheryl Casoni. Ladies, what about the weather? Cheryl, are we going to see another drop in GDP because of this?
Absolutely. We saw this proof in the pudding for first quarter of 2014. It's going to happen again. Remember the size of the population in these East Coast cities that have been affected. Look at Boston, New York, D.C. This is where a big chunk of the population, the spending population, is. They are not spending. They are hunkering down, and a lot of businesses not being able to get goods and services down. You and I talked earlier, of course, today about the port shutdown in Los Angeles.
Right.
Both of these things combined, this huge storm and the port shutdown, are certainly going to be a problem for GDP.
Well,
and those estimates are coming down.
Hillary, I'm going to throw in a couple of other things. Of course, we got Greece, but we also have a less than stellar retail season. This holiday season was not all that great. Plus, we had retail sales down. Plus, today we had a bad manufacturing report from Empire State.
Right, and that is a concern, David, of course. So what I think will eventually happen is we will see it play out in the GDP. But the good news is we're still seeing inflows into the equity market. We're seeing our equity markets at all-time highs, and that's because the proof is in the pudding. Money is just fleeing out of Europe. Situation in Greece, of course, we could see contagion. I'm one of the believers that we are going to go and see Greece back on the drachma, and there could be some of this contagion with these sort of left-wing, anti-austerity measure parties. But I think we're going to be just fine, but GDP could take a bit of a hit.
All right. Sabrina, quickly, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think all you have to do is look at the transportation sector of the economy. We saw that one of the last storms, they canceled 7,300 flights, and it cost the economy $230 million. That wasn't even the cost to the airlines, just the loss to the economy alone. So they really do have a big impact.
Let's focus a little more on Greece. It looks like the Greeks can keep their hands in the cookie jar a little longer. But where will they get the money to pay off their loans? They have to pay 10% interest on their bonds, Hillary. I mean, that's just an extraordinary amount of money to pay.
Well, what will happen is the banks, David, they're going to take another haircut. That's really the story. So either the banks are going to take the write-off in Europe mainly, which is why the European banks have been doing so poorly, and we're going to see this 6-month extension. This is just kicking the can down the road again.
But Sabrina, let me just read for you some of what the Greek finance minister said today in the New York Times. He said, "We're also determined not to be treated as a debt colony that should suffer when it must." I mean, a debt colony, that's a kind of victim language. Is that the card that the Greeks are not playing? They're not victims. They're spendthrifts.
No, and of course, I mean, he talks about needing to tackle the corruption. I think part of the corruption are sort of the false promises that the Greek government promised its people through endless handouts that they couldn't afford. But it's sort of interesting when you look at what he's saying. And, he's sort of the game theorist that's become very popular now. But he's saying, look, it's hard to separate out the Greek debt problem from the Eurozone problem. That is an interesting question, how we're going to handle it.
Cheryl, are we going to see a default?
No, I think that what you're seeing right now is posturing from the Greek finance minister in particular. You've got a very left-wing government. They got elected on one promise. They're going to go back on that promise. The Greeks always do go back on their word. This administration will be no different. All
right, ladies, coming up, what will a Hillary Clinton presidential run look like under the stewardship of outgoing White House counselor John Podesta? And who should be in charge of Wall Street clawbacks, Liz?
David, snow and ice disrupting travel all across the country, grounding flights and leaving thousands of passengers stranded. We're taking you live to Reagan National Airport, where D.C. is all but shut down. That's coming up. And as employers at West Coast ports refuse to unload ships for the 7th day, businesses are taking a big hit. We'll tell you which industries are suffering the most. You may own the stocks that sell this stuff straight ahead.